Football is here, and so are we. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the DFS Dudes, the podcast covering all your daily fantasy sports needs. We are your hosts, Sam Corcoran. To my right, Jake Hart. Down below, Julian Scherman. Guys, I am so excited to do this with you guys. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm feeling great. I mean, I texted you guys all excited when the lineups came out and all the prices and immediately made like 10 of them. So I'm really excited. And honestly, I'm scared I'm going to want to talk for hours and hours.
Yeah, it's considering it's like 2 days away. I mean, I remember looking at a picture, be like, only 100 days away. And I was like crazy excited for it. And so I'm just freaking out right now. I cannot wait for Thursday. So let's get into it.
Oh, me too. It seems like football cannot come any faster. College football is in swing, and we're back in swing. NFL daily fantasy starting to pick up. This, by the way, just for reference, the logo not done yet. We came up with the name last night. We did the logo today because once the lineup came out, we're like, okay, let's get on this. So we're gonna explain how this works to you guys. So Jake, you used to have a podcast back in the day called the Fantasy Hall Monitor or Fantasy Guru with us, and that was a blast. Obviously the website sucked, but
yeah, no, I used Podbean, and it was less about getting noticed than it was just me wanting to talk for about 3 hours every week about every single player and their price. But it was a lot of fun, and I hope we can do it to a bigger audience with DFS Dudes.
Yeah,
absolutely. So here's how it's going to work. So all three of us have made individual lineups. We're going to talk about who is in our lineup, give some reasoning why they're in our lineup, who they play, what their price is. We are using DraftKings prices for their Millie Maker tournament right now. We'll also give some additional names in case if there's a consensus that we all have, which I don't think is going to happen. That never really happened when we did this in the past. We'll also give some additional names. So I have multiple players for each position that are not in my lineup this week. But anyways, if you guys don't know how it works, it's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, and a defense. You have $50,000 to spend.
And full PPR scoring.
Yes, full PPR scoring. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it. And I guess I can start with the quarterback. And in my lineup this week, I have the number 1 overall pick from 2021, Trevor Lawrence, going up against the Washington Commanders at $5,600. The Commanders had one of the worst secondaries in football last year. They didn't do much to improve this offseason from what I can remember. I'll have to look at their depth chart. But also, this could be a very close game. Jacksonville could be playing from behind. I would not be surprised if that's the case. So you're going to expect to see a lot of passing with Trevor Lawrence. So that's my pick right there. I'll let you guys see how do you like that pick? Talk about if you like it, who you guys have, and then after we can throw out some other names, all that. So I'll toss it over to Julian. How do you like that? Or what are your thoughts on that? Or who do you have, I should say?
I think that's fine. I think, honestly, I mean, the chalk is going to be the Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes. That game is going to be like by far the most fun quarterback and wide receivers and stuff like that. But I think if you do want to go Trevor Lawrence, I really don't see a problem with that. And that game is probably going to be pretty low owned. There's not many people going to be on that. And I think if you do decide to go that route and you hit some of the players, Trevor Lawrence falls in the end zone a couple of times. If someone goes off and you hit it right, and I think you could definitely do really well in a Millie Maker. And for cash, I mean, that's not a cash quarterback, but for a Millie Maker, for sure you could do that. I don't see a problem with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I personally love the Christian Kirk play this week at 5.1. So I don't hate the Lawrence. I have yet to start him just because at 5.6, I prefer to have my quarterback for the week is 100 down at Matt Ryan against the Texans. I think the Colts have come out and said that to win, they think that they need to pass the ball more. They're not going to be this 100% ground and pound Jonathan Taylor getting 30 carries a game team that they were last year. And I think if Ryan puts up a solid 302 for 5.5, you're seeing a solid return on your investment. Again, with the cheap stack of Pittman at 5.5 as well. That was my favorite. But again, Julian, talk about yours, and then we can I had a couple spending up options that I also liked.
Yeah, so for me, what I do want to get for my lineup, it's really hard for me to fade the running backs up top, the guys that are just going to be high owned, like guys like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Swift, McCaffrey. And so I think if I want to put that into my Millie Maker lineup, I kind of have to go. I can't go super chalky on my other lineup. So I really like Derek Carr here. I'm putting Carr, and I'm going to pair him with Renfro and Waller. And I think I'd probably have to go Devontae Adams with it. But if I'm going to plug in the
Damn.
two top running backs, I can't really go Devontae Adams, right? And so I think Renfro is going to be super low owned, and I think that Waller's going to be low owned because people are going to be on Devontae Adams. And if Derek Carr, does well and Renfro gets a couple touchdowns, Waller gets in the end zone, and Adams is going to get what he's going to get. But if he doesn't get a touchdown, he only gets like 14, 15 fantasy points. Carr does relatively well without that. I think that's something that could do really well or really, really poorly if Carr flops. So I think that's what I'm going with if I'm going to get those two wide, massive running backs. If not, then I'll pair Carr with Devontae Adams and bring it back with Keenan Allen, I think.
Interesting.
Really
Yeah, I actually have Darren Waller as my tight end. We'll talk about that more later. But I think the Raiders-Chargers game also could be a very high offensive power game. So I think rostering some of those guys would be a fantastic idea. But I want to go back to Jake's point about Matt Ryan, because that was actually my second guy that I was going to talk about. I'm not starting him. I have Lawrence over him. But you're going against Houston, and Ryan throws the ball. I believe he threw the ball the most out of any quarterback in the it's either last decade or there was some time period where he threw the ball significantly more than anyone else with Atlanta. Now you're in a better system with the Colts. You have not as good as receivers as he did in his prime Atlanta days, but you still got Pittman. You still got Jonathan Taylor. They might use him in the receiving game a lot. And overall, I think Matt Ryan going against Houston at 5,500 is a really good play. So I don't blame you at all, Jake. The last guy I wanted to talk about, who none of us have talked about so far, Jameis Winston, 5,300 at Atlanta. Atlanta, I know they have AJ Terrell. Other than that, though, it's not really the best secondary. And Jameis loves passing the ball. You got a lot of receivers: Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave. More on that receiving core later. I'll have some stuff to say about them. But Jameis Winston, if you really need a really cheap option, not a bad play at all.
Yeah, and then if you want to go, we all mentioned some of the lower owned, maybe Millie Maker type Hail Mary quarterbacks. But if you're looking more cash game or like super stack, I like Kyler Murray and Trey Lance. Trey Lance can be a kind of a solo play cash game at 6 flat. I think this is going to be one of the cheapest prices you'll see him all year, especially with his rushing upside. You really don't need a Deebo Samuel or George Kittle to make this a worth it play in a cash game. And then with Kyler Murray, again, like those Millie Maker winning like super stacks, it seems like the last few years has been the Cardinals against the Seahawks, the Cardinals against the Rams. There's been those games where he just goes absolutely wild, and you'll see him get a rushing touchdown, and you can pair it with a Marquise Brown that's not an overpriced option at wide receiver, and still run it back with some of those Chiefs if you want a star tight end in Kelsey and then go cheap on running back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's all. Yeah, but I think you're gonna have to get something that's low owned if you're gonna do that, because that's such a game everyone's gonna target.
It's the weeks when everyone knows what the game is.
Yeah, and that's why for me, I think if you're gonna go heavy on, for me, I think one of the best plays I think for tournaments is Josh Jacobs and James Conner, because first Conner he's not gonna be owned because they're going passing him. Kyler, Marquise Brown, they're gonna go Rondale Moore, and I think if Connor gets in the end zone a couple of times, gets some receptions, Zach Ertz gets a couple of the TDs, and Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown don't hit so much, I think that's something that you get Connor at sub 5%. Same thing with Josh Jacobs. You get him with 2-3% ownership, and everyone's on Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, bring it back with Keenan Allen or something like that. Nobody's really on Jacobs, and so there's a lot of upside there. And those are the two running backs that I would play if you're going to go with the chalk. of the Derek Carr, I would say put in James Conner. And if you do the Kyler Murray one, I think Josh Jacobs a good one to put in that's not so high owned if you are going Rondale Moore, Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean James Conner too, especially. I know Rondale Moore and Zach Ertz have not been practicing lately, and their availability for week 1 is somewhat up in the air. So those intermediate targets, if they go away, James Conner, you could see 6 or 7 targets, maybe a couple receptions. Also on top of obviously he had something crazy like 16 rushing touchdowns last year. So he's definitely an exciting play. If you want to go, but he's more of a single stack. I'm not playing him with Kyler.
Exactly. He's worth $7,000. Right now, that's above some solid running backs. I'm trying to find where I was looking at my thing and one of the running backs I want. Oh, that's why. Yeah, it's a pretty solid play. Again, that Arizona Kansas City game should have a high powered offense. For me at running back, considering the rest of my lineup, I kind of went chalk on this. I went 2 guys who I think are going to get the ball a lot. They're playing defenses that aren't the best defense, and it could be a high-scoring game for their teams. I went Austin Eckler, and I went Alvin Kamara. I think they're going to get the ball a lot, both in the passing game and the running game. I think the Raiders' defense is not necessarily the best. The Chargers' offense is very high-powered. That's probably the second biggest offensive power game of the week, in my opinion, behind Kansas City, Arizona. So you have that. I also think Kamara, again, Atlanta. I love the Saints in this matchup. They really have a good team all around. I think that Kamara's going to get the ball a lot, especially if this team is up big. They're going to start running the ball out. Kamara's going to get some of that yardage. He's going to get some check down passes. They are worth, if I look at their prices right now, $8,200 for Eckler, $7,600 for Kamara. So on the higher end, I'm definitely going chalk on this one. If you want a guy who's cheaper, there are 2 guys. First off, there are not many guys on the cheaper side, I got to say, this week. First guy could be out week 1, but that's J.K. Dobbins, $5,600 against the Jets. I think Baltimore is going to run them over all game, whether it be with Lamar Jackson, whether it be with J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is going to get some reps in that if he's healthy and he plays. Second guy, $5,400, another team that looks like they have a high-powered rushing attack. Miles Sanders, I'm a bit iffy on him, but I would Dobbins for $200 more. I would much rather choose J.K. Dobbins, and you can probably take off some dollars with either defense, wide receiver, tight end. I have some good options for cheap there if you want to go cheap. But so, I'm going chalk with Eckler and Kamara. If you want to go Taylor, Henry, Mixon, someone like that on the higher end, even Christian McCaffrey, you definitely can do that as well. But I'm going to go Eckler and Kamara. I like their matchups a bit. Dobbins and Sanders if you don't want to go chalk.
Yeah.
I mean, good. I like those. I found myself playing, just with how my lineup shook out this week, playing a lot less of the top tier. I think they're priced fine, but I don't know exactly what to expect from those offenses, and you're riding so much on that one player, or especially if you do like an Eckler and CMC or Henry and CMC stack, it makes it really tough on the rest of your lineup. But there's one guy who is higher priced, but not up in that 8K range, and that's Aaron Jones at 6.7. I didn't talk about either of the quarterbacks in the first section, but I think the Vikings-Packers game is going to be a great game. Shootout. I think Aaron Jones is going to be on the field a lot. I think you're talking 8 to 10 targets and guaranteed a touchdown. And at 6.7, that really excites me. I find him almost in all my lineups, that even ones that are a super stack, because I think Rodgers and Jones in the same lineup is fine, because at this point, he's their number 1 receiver in my mind, as well as having a big part in the running game.
Yeah. I actually, that was the guy that I was going to talk. I really do like Aaron Jones. And I like the Alvin Kamara pick. And I think he's not going to be as chalky as a lot of people think, because there's just so much value up there, right? Because you go below him. And guys like Saquon and Swift are guys that people, I think they're going to go on. They're going to choose them. And I think for sure you could go Alvin Kamara. And I think Dalvin Cook, a guy with such a massive ceiling who's going to get overlooked in the GPP, is someone that, you could target. And I think that's kind of what you want to look for. People that, there's obviously the chalk that's chalk for a reason. It's a really good matchup. But you want to get some of those guys that are low owned. But for me, I really in GPPs, I'm kind of with Sam. I'm going to go chalk and then have to go away on the wide receivers. Like I said, it's hard to fade those like Swift and Saquon, those guys. So I think for me, I'm going to go with the chalk on the running backs. But if you don't want to do that, I think for me, the other two players are, like I said, Josh Jacobs and James Conner. For me, those are my two picks.
Yeah, and if we're getting, I know we talked a little bit about super low cost players, but there were two that I found myself getting more than anyone else. The first one was Elijah Mitchell at 5.4.
Yes, I was going to say him too.
I'm not a 49ers expert. I don't know. He's questionable right now. I assume he's going to play. And then also Dameon Pierce at 4.8. He is by far the lowest guy who you assume is going to get 10 plus touches, and you just never know. The Texans, they said they want to establish the run. If he sneaks in there for a touchdown, maybe gets 3 or 4 catches, you could see him have a nice little 20-point game. And at 4K, he's a great, like, under the radar play who I think he's going to be probably 10 to 12% owned just because he's been a big name in the fantasy community as of late. But I do like him if you're trying to go real low on that.
Yeah, I will say this is probably the lowest we'll see Dameon Pierce all season. Maybe it could go week 2 because the Colts do have a pretty good run defense. But that's if you really want a deep sleeper, there you go with Dameon Pierce. Speaking of deep sleepers, I think this is a good segue to wide receivers. And Jake, you talked about the Packers game. Well, how about Romeo Doubs at $3,000 against the Minnesota Vikings? He's impressed all camp. I believe he's a rookie if I look it up. Romeo Doubs. He is a rookie. Yes, that's what I thought. He has been the guy who stood out all camp long for everyone. Everyone's saying this guy could be wide receiver 1 for the Packers, overtake guys like Christian Watson, Allen Lazard. And Minnesota secondary, not really great at all. They didn't have a good season last year, ranked dead last at 32nd. It wasn't dead last, I don't think, because Washington was also there. It was somewhere around there, but it was in the 30s somewhere. Anyways, if you need a deep sleeper, because again, you're going to have to put some deep sleeper in your line, especially if you're going chalk on running back, which we agreed on. I think receiver is where I have the most sleepers. I have 2 somewhat sleepers, but Romeo Doubs is definitely the deepest one out of all of them at $3,000 against the Minnesota Vikings. You need 3 receivers for this. So I'll talk about my second sleeper, and then we can talk more about who else I want at the other wide receiver, maybe a flex for that. The other sleeper I have, we're going back to the Atlanta game for New Orleans, Chris Olave. I know you have Michael Thomas as another receiver, but Olave has looked pretty good in camp. Again, $4,500. That's not a bad price. It's basically, I feel like you're getting a cheaper Michael Thomas. And I think he's going to get the ball a lot. They're going to pass the ball. New Orleans did that last year with Jameis a decent bit. I know they had some injuries across the board with Michael Thomas. Their receivers were not the best, but I'm going to go Olave as a second sleeper. Not as deep as Romeo Doubs, but $4,500 is a solid price for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I am staying away from the Saints outside of Alvin Kamara. I have no idea what to expect. And if you take a guy like Michael Thomas or Chris Olave, and they're not, or even Romeo Doubs at $3K, and I understand that's a big spend down, but those are guys who can put up a 0. And especially, and again, this is Millie Maker, so that's okay. But if you're playing them in a cash game, that makes me real nervous. And I prefer, normally I say stay out of the middle, but I believe that there's a lot of wide receivers that are not correctly priced right now. It's week 1. So there are some really good values of guys who I believe that are going to be up in the high 6 and 7K that are currently sitting at around 5. My starting receivers, I won't talk about the first one too much. Michael Pittman, 5.5, stack with Matt Ryan. I think if they connect on 1 touchdown, that's immediately just 11K for a wide receiver and a quarterback, and they're already getting you points. It's a really solid play, and they could go off against the Texans if Pittman somehow comes out and proves he is like the target, the guy who's going to get 10 a game. And then my other 2 in my actual lineup are Hollywood Brown and Adam Thielen. Hollywood Brown, again, I mentioned Rondale, Zach Ertz, little banged up. I don't know what to expect. Already lost Christian Kirk, D-Hop suspended. It seems like Hollywood's the guy. And so if he comes up big against what should be a shootout against the Chiefs, I think he's going to be someone you want in your lineup. And at only 6.2, it's really valuable. And then mentioned this before, so I won't talk about it in depth, but all the Vikings receivers, give them all to me. If you want to spend up for J. Jeff at 7.8, that's great. I didn't find myself doing that a whole lot just because I think Thielen at 5.4 and Osborne at 4.9 are really nicely priced, especially if you put it with Kirk, and then you can get super chalky on the running backs. Because I think that game is going to be a bloodbath, and you're going to be fine with any of those receivers.
Yeah, I want to talk about, I'll let Julian talk in a sec, but Marquise Brown is my third guy as well. Jake, you've been raving to him in our fantasy league back at home for PPR full season league, how they're going all air raid. He's getting the ball. He's the wide receiver one. He's got that connection with Kyler Murray. There aren't many receivers around him. I think if I had to put a lock of the week for my starting receiver, it would be for just any starting player, it would be Marquise Brown. I would put Marquise Brown on all my teams this week at 6,200 in a game which should be a shootout. That's a deal right there. That's the best deal of the week in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think Pittman, obviously, the guy's in a smash spot with his price, and with Matt Ryan throwing him the ball, I think it's against that Houston secondary. I mean, that's got to be a place. But in cash, I mean, you don't have to do it in tournament. But I think Christian Kirk, going off of what you said about Trevor Lawrence, I do like that. I think for me, one of the things I want to go high-end RB, something that's chalky. I think if you go Trevor Lawrence with Christian Kirk, I think that's something that could definitely do really well. Because I like Kirk a lot for year round. And I'm here with Jacksonville, and I think you could even go, it sounds a little weird, but I think you could put an ETN and Kirk, because ETN, he's a pass catcher. He's going to get a lot of passes. So if you are going Lawrence, it's not crazy to go ETN as well in your flex. And then you go Christian Kirk, and then you can fit in those top tier running backs. For me, that's why I really like what you said about Trevor Lawrence, and I think that connection that he's going to have with Christian Kirk to go along with Travis Etienne. And so, obviously, I like Pittman was one of the guys that I was going to talk about, and Rondale Moore. Those are all great guys. But I think Christian Kirk's someone that could do well this week. And if you are going to do chalk and running backs, that Jaguar stack's going to be really solid.
So you guys are stacking a lot with with going with a quarterback and then one of the receivers. I don't have that as of now. I know I have Trevor Lawrence. You guys have talked about Christian Kirk. And I've mentioned I already have the three receivers, Marquise Brown, Romeo Dubes, Chris Olave. And if I can find Christian Kirk, what is he priced at right now?
5.1.
5.1. So I took a guy instead of Christian Kirk at 5.2. We're going back to the Kansas City game, Juju Smith-Schuster. I know the receiving room in Kansas City is a bit iffy right now. You have Kelsey, who's probably the wide receiver one, but who's going to replace Tyreek Hill? Juju Smith-Schuster is the most proven player at 5,200. I'm definitely going up a lot more upside with my receivers, especially when you look at guys like Romeo Dubes and Chris Olave, two very risky picks upside. And Juju could be a solid upside pick as well. He didn't have the best season in Pittsburgh last year, but now you got Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. And I think that's a game changer right there, especially in a game that could be a bloodbath. I think he's another guy that I want to have on my roster. Arizona, they don't have the best secondary. Last year, they were ranked 28, I believe. So overall, I think, and with Kyler Murray as quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, as the quarterback, he'll be slinging the ball all over the place. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to have, someone's got to take those Tyreek Hill targets. Juju Smith-Schuster is he's right now in line to take those. So I'm going to go with him as my fourth receiver, and that will be my flex for the week.
Yeah, maybe I was going to bring up another guy, and maybe it's my season-long bias because I really don't like Juju. You've been hearing all offseason how he has to take practices off to drain his knee. I'm like, this guy's like 26 and he's draining his knee like 5 times in the offseason. That just, I don't know what to think about that. But for me, I follow the money. Who did they pay the most money to? I think he got 3 years, 30 mil, MVS, and he's priced at 4.7. He'll be the deep threat. He's in the X position right now. I think that if someone is going to come out and have a big game with 2 touchdowns on somehow like 4 receptions, it's going to be him. He's definitely the guy who's going to be there to stretch the field. And if Juju is not in the slot and he's in the Y, that makes me a little nervous too, because Juju's just been playing in the slot for the considerable past. But if they put Sky Moore or something out there, I do like Juju a bit more just because he gets those slot spam targets, which you saw Mahomes do at the end of last year. And then my last guy, which is a big spend down, the lowest that I was going a wide receiver, was Kadarius Toney at 4.1. I think if he plays, again, he is quite a bit more questionable than some of the guys who have the questionable tag, but he was a target monster when he was on the field, one of the highest targets per route run in the whole NFL. And you don't really know what to expect from the Giants receiving core. All we've been hearing is that Kenny Golladay looks like crap. So
Yeah.
That's a big upside play. And even if he just snags 5 receptions, he's such a dynamic runner that you could see him do a lot with that.
And by the way, Kenny Galladay's at 4,800 and Kadarius Toney's at 4,100. If you play Kenny Golladay when there's Kadarius Toney, I don't know what you're on, but that would be the worst move of the week. Just you gotta look down the board a little bit, try to get the guys who are just the better players. I know Kenny Golladay is the bigger name as of now, but I think Toney's a very solid option as a sleeper as well. Another guy as a sleeper I put down, and then I'll let Julian speak. And I think there are better guys than him, but I just put him down on my list because I didn't know if you guys were going to talk about him. But Elijah Moore, 5,100 against Baltimore. Jets are going to be playing from behind a lot. I know the Ravens secondary, as I said, they struggled last year with a ton of injuries. They're kind of back now. It's not necessarily the strongest defense, in my opinion, in Baltimore, but I think the Jets are going to be playing from behind, and I think someone's got to get those targets. It could be Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore is also a solid pick. I think there are better guys than him, so I would not necessarily stay away from. I would kind of stay away from him, but if you need somebody to fill a spot at 5,100, I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, that was someone that I was looking at. I think also for me, I put in Joshua Palmer in my lineup because I think he's just such a value play, and he's so good. He's young, he's good, he's got Herbert, and we don't really know what he is, but from what we saw, he looks pretty darn good. And I think for me, I am going with the Waller, Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, and for bring back, I can't really. Keenan Allen's a little expensive. Austin Eckler's expensive. And I think Joshua Palmer is a guy that has really good value with a really good upside. He's fast, he's strong. I think he's just a really good wide receiver. I think Herbert's going to like him a lot this year. And so for this week, going against the Raiders secondary and a game that I think could be pretty high scoring with 2 really good offenses, in my opinion, and that's why Derek Carr's my quarterback. I think Joshua Palmer, that's my sleeper, and I think he's going to do well this week.
Priced at 3,800 in a pretty high-powered Chargers offense. I think my only concern with him is I know you have Eckler, you got Keenan, you got Mike Williams. A fourth option it's a bit iffy in my opinion. That's why I went Dubes. You're looking at probably a second, third option at 3,000, which is fine. I know Jake, you went Kadarius Toney at 4,100. That's probably a number 1 option right there.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree with what you said, Sam. I think you're talking about the fourth option on the Chargers, but for Dubes in Green Bay, I think if you're talking about Jones, Lazard, Watkins, Cobb, and the guy that they took, the other rookie that they took, Christian Watson, it's so muddled. And with, Rodgers not really wanting to throw to rookies in the past, and then you've also got Tunyon at tight end, it just that becomes really, really scary to me, especially where you could see them run it in a lot more than the Chargers will. So I do like Joshua Palmer. They said that he won the number 3 job over Jalen Guyton, which he was battling with at the end of last year, and still got, I think he had in the last 6 weeks, he had like 4 games with 7 targets. So that's really exciting to me. And if you see him haul in a single touchdown, I mean, at 3.8, you're basically getting your money's worth right there.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking of Palmer, and I think that when you're looking at week 1, it's really hard to tell who's going to be good, especially these young guys. I mean, who really knows? With like you talked about on Green Bay, a lot of young receivers, and I think Palmer is a guy that could come out as a really good wide receiver, and it's really hard to tell. So people aren't going to be on him. I think he's someone that has a lot of upside, which is really what you're looking for in a GPP, especially with someone that's 3,800. It's like, where's the upside? If there's no upside, then why am I getting him, right? So Palmer, yeah, he's wide receiver 4, but he's cheap with a lot of upside, and I think it's going to be a lot of throwing that game, and so that's why I really like him as my bring back for Derek Carr, Waller, Devontae Adams.
Absolutely. So Julian and I, moving on to tight end, I said I have Waller as well. Julian has Waller. We'll talk more about Waller later, but I want to hear who Jake has at tight end. What's your tight end pick for the week, Jake?
I have 2 tight end picks, and I was basically using them in every lineup depending on how much I had left. If I was going cheap, I really like Cole Kmet. You don't know really what to expect out of Chicago's passing game, but Mooney and Kmet are going to be the guys. And Kmet had 0 touchdowns last year. So simply with the bounce back year, if he catches 1 and he's going to get 6 or 8 targets, I think that's really solid for a guy who's priced at 3.7 right now. So if you want to go, I found myself going cheap tight end, cheap defense so much just so that I could go up and get those really high priced wide receivers like Jay Jettis. And then if I did go higher price at tight end, I went Kyle Pitts, 5.7. It's full PPR, and I think you got to take full advantage of that. He's still priced in the mid 5s, which is really solid. And you're looking at a guy who could get, you don't know, he could get 15 targets. It's like, it's a brand new Falcons offense. And as much as people want to shit all over Mariota, he's got to throw to someone. And Drake London has been banged up and is still a rookie. And Kyle Pitts, you're looking at a guy who is there's no one like him at tight end. So he's going to be a matchup nightmare. He's going to be open a lot, and Mariota is going to trust him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think Pitts is a solid option. The reason I picked Waller at 5,400 instead of Pitts at 5,700 is just because the Saints defense, I know he's going to get targeted, but the Saints defense it's really good. And the people who are going to be covering Kyle Pitts are pretty good players. I know they lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but that's just one player. I know they have
it's just you're talking about a guy who's he's 6'7" and has 4.4 speed at tight end.
Yeah, I'm not worried about
what player do you have to guard him?
My thing is I think Waller's going to get more chances to get into the end zone than Kyle Pitts is what I was trying to lead to. And that's why.
That's definitely true. Kyle Pitts had 1 touchdown last year?
Yeah.
Over 1,000 yards receiving. And I don't really like this game of Atlanta and New Orleans. I think it's going to be probably a sub 40 point game, but
with the majority coming from New Orleans on that.
If he happens to sneak one in, it's automatically a win because I can bet that he's getting 5+ catches at the tight end position for probably 50+ yards.
Yeah, and I think how many tight ends out there are really the number 1 option on a team? And not only is number 1 option, he's really freaking good. So yeah, the team isn't great, but when you get a guy that's going to have a lot of targets, and I'm not worried about the defense, it's a tight end. It's not like you have to go against Jalen Ramsey and you're a wide receiver 1. That's you're tight end, you got linebackers, strong safeties guarding you, and he's just so good. I don't care who's guarding him. And so I really like that. But I also I think Zach Ertz is a guy that's going to go overlooked. And I think especially if you're not going to go with the Rondale Moore, Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray, especially in a tournament, and you could see that Zach Ertz, there's going to be scoring in that game. And if Zach Ertz catches a couple touchdowns in the red zone at really low ownership, not many people are going to be on him. They're going to be on other players in that game. I think that's a really good play. That's why I like James Conner and Zach Ertz, because those are 2 guys that are overlooked in that game. And I think if Rondell Moore and Marquise Brown don't get the touchdowns, I think Zach Ertz, James Conner can be people that I really like in that game. And so for my pick, I am going Waller because I have Derek Carr. But if I wasn't, I think I would go Ertz would really be a good pick for me.
Alrighty then. So Waller seems like the consensus right now. We'll talk more about the consensus later. Kyle Pitts seems like the other option. You're going who's the other? You're going Cole Kmet, which I actually put down as my sleeper if you want to go low at tight end. But let's finish this off with defense. And I'm going to be honest, I was looking at the defenses. Initially, I had the 49ers, and now it's 4,100. I know they're going against the Bears, whose offense is god-awful. But I want to look deeper, and I was just looking through this, and I see the Dolphins at 2,600 against a Patriots offense who all throughout camp you've heard is awful. They've just looked ridiculously bad. You got Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator, running the plays, a defensive-minded coach calling the offensive plays. I know Miami didn't have the best defense last year, but you still got guys in this. You still got guys like Byron Jones. You still got Xavier Howard. Safeties are solid. I mean, it's a pretty solid defense all around. And against a New England team, which has been really struggling on offense all throughout camp, I think that's the move to go. So in turn, I'm going to have to change my lineup. I'm going to have to change my lineup up a bit. But in turn, I'm putting Pittman in my flex over Olave. That was another guy I wanted to talk about. You guys obviously stole him from me. So I'm going to put him in, and I'm going to switch the Miami defense with the 49ers, putting the Miami defense in at 2,600, and I'll go cheap at defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
go ahead, Julian.
Okay. I think, first of all, the Commanders defense at 2,500, that's against Jacksonville. That's a value that a lot of people are going to be on, and I think that makes sense. But I also think that, if you want to go someone that's low-owned, and I hate to say it, but it's Trey Lance's first start going against Chicago, and I think defense is such a crapshoot that who the hell knows? And Trey Lance, coming in his first start, I love him. I hope he does well. But there's a good chance that he does make some rookie mistakes, leave some – or not rookie, but, he's basically a rookie, started 1 or 2 games. That's a defense that I think you could target, but if you are going to go with the best value defense, I think it is the Commanders defense going against Jacksonville, 2,500. But with defense, who knows, really?
Yeah, I had 3 defenses written down that I basically just went and chose from them each time. And you mentioned a couple of them. The Niners, 4.1. If I've got the money to spend it and that's the best place to use it, that's where I'll go, because I think they're going to be guaranteed to be like a top 3 or 5. I'm drafting them in all my redraft because they've got a good first few weeks. After that, the Commanders at 2.5, just because you don't know what to expect from Jacksonville. And I don't know. I mean, some new Chase Young news came out. I don't know if that affects his availability for week 1.
He's on PUP, so he's not playing.
Okay. Well, never mind then.
Yeah.
But it's still a mediocre defense going up against an unproven offense. And the last one, I'm not a big believer in spending up on the defense, and so I went with the absolute lowest. And I know they're probably going to be highly owned just because that's always how it is with the bottom defense. But the Detroit Lions at 2,000, as much as you want to believe, and I want to believe with my exposure to AJ Brown in fantasy, that the Eagles offense is going to be really good this year, they just weren't last year. And to be able to expect them that they're really going to change. It's going to be so much better this year. And then you've got a new guy on the D-line, Aiden Hutchinson. And if he gets a sack or 2, like, all you're looking for is 5 or 6 points from that Lions defense. And Hurts, he throws a lot of picks. They don't score a lot of points. They're a pretty slow, run-heavy offense. So I think you could randomly see them put up 6 or 8 points and be really solid at just 2K, and it allows me to spend up everywhere else.
And I agree with, and also AJ Brown, it's his first game there. So, the connection, who really knows, you're kind of getting on your feet. Like, it's really hard to tell. And I think that's something that, if it was week 10, it would be different because AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts know each other a little more. But for 2K, with that Lions defense, that's one of the top values defensively or even on the slate.
So I just want to bring up two things. So first of all, the point about AJ Brown not having the connection with Jalen Hurts yet. I just don't think that's true. They've known each other for a very long time. They've been good friends and been training together for a very long time. If you actually watch on YouTube, AJ Brown on the phone with the Titans when he's getting drafted, who's the next person you see in the frame? Jalen Hurts. He's there with him. They're throwing the football around. Those two are best friends. They were best friends before they teamed up. So I think that connection is going to be there. I'm not doubting the Lions because I honestly think the Lions D at 2,000 is definitely a solid pickup. But I was also a bit disappointed, Jake. You didn't mention my boy Rodrigo when you brought up Agent Hutchinson.
Yeah, I can tell you got the training camp cap on. You've mentioned it all day, and you got the cup of coffee relationship between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and now you got the hard knocks. So the big three have been mentioned, but the shower narrative is not something that I super
and I think obviously that was just a kind of a point that they're not connected. Like I know they're butt buddies or best friends, whatever. I don't care, but for $2,000 for defense, if they get like 4 points, it's like, okay, I spent $2,000. Just please don't give up 40 points and give me negative 4 points. Like, just get me in the positive. Give me like 5 points for that defense, and you're fine. That's what I think can definitely happen. And I think it's just when we're talking about defense, especially the lowest owned defense, it's like, who knows? Or the lowest price defense. It's like, just get me a few points and we're good. It's defense. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Who
really knows?
If you're in the plus for the lowest ranked defense, you're going to be fine. So at the end of the day, I think it's not a bad pick. If you really are low on money, you can take the Lions.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
For sure.
Exactly. Well, I said we would keep it this under an hour. We have 20 minutes left. We'll see if that goes over under 20 minutes, but let's make a consensus lineup. And we'll just go down by positions. I've already wrote a few players down that some of us have mentioned that we can agree upon them. We can disagree upon them. But let's start with the quarterback. I haven't wrote someone down for this, but the one guy I think that I would have in mind is Matt Ryan. I know, Jake, you're starting him. He's my number 2 option. Julian, you seem to like the pick. Is there anyone else that people want to nominate for that?
Well, I mean, let's talk first. I'm assuming, are we entering this in the Millie Maker?
We are. Yes, we are. We're entering this in the Millie Maker.
Do we want to do a big game stack, or do we want to rely on the? Because I mean, if you're doing Ryan, I don't really want to run it back with any sort of Houston talent over there. So I think that's the first thing that we need to discuss, and that's a bit of game theory stuff. That it's almost dealer's choice, because you see every other week it's some random lineup where there's not a 2 players in the same game. And then the next week, it's everyone is playing in the same game because it was 55-40 in this blowout. So I think I can go either way. I don't know what you guys want to do.
I think Matt Ryan, if you have Matt Ryan, you have to pair him with, Michael Pittman, and he's probably going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. So if you're really going to go Matt Ryan route, which is fine, whatever quarterback you want to go with, right? But you have to think about, okay, I'm going Pittman. Do I run it back with Damian Pierce? Yeah, sure, I could do that, right? But with Matt Ryan, you're really not going to target 2 people on that offense. Probably, it's Pittman. He's just going to be throwing the ball to Pittman. You're not going to want Ryan and Jonathan Taylor. And so I think you want to run it back. You want to really run it back with Damian Pierce. So for me, I think it's fine to do that. I would prefer personally to go Trevor Lawrence. Just because if we can go Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, all playable, and then you can fill it in with stud running backs like Saquon, Swift, all these guys, and you can fit in a good tight end because you're going so cheap with Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk, and Etienne. That's just my thought process right there.
Yeah, and someone that I didn't talk about, I meant to, but if you're running that Jacksonville game, I do like God, what's their rookie's name? Wide receiver, first round.
They did not take a wide receiver round 1.
Washington did.
Oh, Washington. Oh, Jahan Dotson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jahan. Well, I just meant in that game. Jahan Dotson, I mean, he's super low price, 3,400 for being the wide receiver 2 against Jacksonville. That's been someone who in some Millie Maker lineups, if I want a deep sleeper or have run out of money because I decided to spend way up on a couple guys, I've found in my lineup as well, just because I know he's going to get targets. I know it's a bad defense, and I can trust that if that game happens to be like the random shootout between two bad teams, he can be really valuable at just 3,400.
I agree with that. I think Dotson was someone that I was actually looking at. And I think Dotson, is the play to run it back. I mean, obviously, Terry McLaurin, a lot of upside there. But with Dotson, also a lot of upside. And I think, more people are going to be on Terry. And so that's why I think Dotson's a play. Cheaper. I like that.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with the Lawrence, Kirk, and Dotson. I don't think we need to go. I mean, we can revisit with the flex with ETN, but with those low priced guys, I don't think we're going to need to go that low at running back in terms of price, just because those receivers are, I mean, what? Lawrence is 5.6, Kirk's 5.1, and Dotson's 3.4. So we're already going to have an average of like over 6 or 7 for the other positions when you factor in the defense.
Yeah, so. I'm putting this in right now. We're at the right now we haven't factored in defense, but you're at $6,000 right now for average, and I'm cool with that as well. Considering that I have Trevor Lawrence starting, we all talked about Christian Kirk as a guy that most people like. Jahan Dotson 3,400. That's definitely a good deep sleeper to have. I know I didn't write him down, but you look at it now. Like I didn't write many players down. I kept it kind of small, but that's a great player to have as well, especially a guy who's, again, I'm putting on the training camp hat. Done pretty well in training camp. That's all I'm saying. I know training camp doesn't even mean anything, but for week 1, it's good to target guys, in my opinion, that have done well in training camp, could do well week 1. But we got 3 players. Let's do we want to move on to running back, tight end, or do we want to factor in the defense or do that last?
We can just do defense.
Yeah, I like doing defense early just so that I know how much I have to spend on each position.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I'm fine with any of the. I prefer the lower priced ones. I think going up for the Niners is a little risky.
I say one defense that we all talked about, again, sticking that Washington game. Do we want to go Commanders? Because I know we all kind of mentioned that a little bit. We can change it up later if we want to go Lions or even higher. But I think for now, a good placeholder would be the Commanders.
I think, but the Commanders, everyone's going to super high. I think we go Lions defense. But.
I disagree with the Commanders just because we have Lawrence and Christian Kirk. So that's a little
fair enough.
That's a little contrary.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of guys that we all talked about together because whatever. But yeah, okay. So let's go Lions for that if that's cool. That's another defense we all talked about, and that's the cheapest option. That's going to give us a ton of wiggle room. If we want to go higher, we can. We'll figure that out later on. But it's nice to
I mean, that just comes down to the Millie Maker philosophy. It's really you're picking a scenario and you're thinking, if this best thing happens, like what does this lineup do? Is it winning me $1 million? That's basically like that's got to be the philosophy. You got to throw out being embarrassed by a 60-point lineup.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on. I say we move on to running back because I think we all agreed we wanted to go chalk there. So let's just get that money out of the way so we can figure out receiver and tight end after and a flex too. Looking at it, I know we all talked about Kamara and we all talked about Aaron Jones. We could go higher, but those are the 2 guys I think I heard the most of.
I mean, I love Aaron Jones, and I've found myself with a good amount of Kamara. But if we have a lot of money to spend, I would go higher than Kamara personally.
Okay, well, like Eckler at 8,200.
I like Eckler. I think Taylor.
I think Saquon is my favorite pick going against Tennessee and Swift, but
Saquon's at 6,100 right now.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, if you look, Austin Eckler's at 8,200 compared to 6,100. How many more points is Eckler going to get than Saquon? I think Saquon's a pretty good pick.
Could go. The other thing you could do is you could go instead of Eckler and someone else, you could go Saquon and maybe Justin Jefferson or someone like that.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna have a lot of money to throw around.
Yeah, so I'm definitely gonna put Aaron Jones in there for starters. I think
why don't we put Jones and Saquon and see where we're at because we got 3 spots left to fill.
Yes, and we have an average right now of $7,000. So we have 3 spots left: 1 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 flex. Justin Jefferson at 7,800. I think right now that's not going to hurt you.
I think I don't hate going J-Jeff and Travis Kelce just because those are going to be big scoring games and the number 1 target on great offenses. And I don't know how much we have left for
we
flex.
have 6,700 left. So you can get a guy. I know we talked about Marquise Brown at 6,200, and then we get, if you want to spend more 500 more on defense, if you want to go higher at a running back position, even quarterback. I know we talked about we're trying to package Trevor Lawrence and everything. I think the best idea is to go Marquise Brown. Then you have 500 left to spend. You could go. You can't really go Commanders defense. I think the best option for defense is still the Detroit Lions. But then you look at running back. I wish I could share my screen right now. For some reason, my computer's not letting me. But you have, I honestly am cool with this lineup. There's not many other guys I would want to take. If you want running back instead of Saquon, you can get Chubb, Najee. We could go Josh Jacobs. That's the other option that I know, Julian, you were very high on. We aren't packaging Waller. We went Jefferson, Kelce, and Hollywood Brown for those last 3 positions with 500 left to spend.
Okay.
I think if we have 500 left to spend, I think maybe we just move up into one of the. Is there another defense that excites anyone? I don't know. That's not
So
really.
what's our lineup? We got Lawrence, Barkley, Jones, Dotson, Kirk,
Jefferson, Kelce, Hollywood Brown, and the Lions defense. Let me try sharing my screen one more time. I don't know why it's not working, but that's the lineup. We got to get the viewers to see. Share. There we go. That's working now. Yeah, so that's the lineup right there. You got 500 left to spend. I'm cool with this. I don't really see a defense that the highest you can get is Commanders, which it's not going to really work out for this. You also could go other thing you could go Matt Ryan, and then instead of Christian Kirk, you go Michael Pittman. Then you can probably I think you would be set at that. Then you don't really need to spend more. You can use that money in a different way, which I actually would be a bit more comfortable with as of now.
I do prefer that stack and just keeping Jahan Dotson and just kind of hoping.
Yeah. So I think the best bet right now, you switch that up, go Matt Ryan at receiver at 5,500, Michael Pittman, 200 left to spend. You can't really do anything with that unless you want to upgrade someone, which I don't really see. I think the only upgrade you can make that I think we're debating right now, did someone have a receiver at 3,600?
At 3,600?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to see who else could we get, which would be 200 more.
I'm sorry.
Joshua Palmer was at 3,800. My bad.
More than
the only thing that I would be willing to switch up, but I kind of like where we're at right now, is if you put Josh Jacobs over Saquon Barkley.
Over Saquon? I don't know.
Yeah,
I am a Raiders fan, and
that's what I was saying. I don't like that, but I know Julian talked about that.
But the thing is with Saquon is he's so high owned and Jacobs is so low owned. So I mean, if we are going, who do we got? Pittman's going to be really high owned. Marquise Brown really high owned. We could put in Jacobs. He's not the optimal play, but if you want to leverage ownership a little bit, but if you want points, go Saquon. Really, if you want value, it just depends on what you want to do.
I think you guys stick with the points. You're trying to win the most money. You're trying to get the most points. I say we stick with Saquon Barkley, and I say this would be the consensus lineup for the week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. So I will put that in. How about we close this out by everyone share their own lineup one more time for the week. I'll start with Julian. What's your own lineup for the week? Then we'll go to Jake and I'll finish it off.
Okay, yeah. So I got Derek Carr. He's my quarterback. I think he's gonna do really well. I got James Conner. He's a guy that I'm pretty high on because I think a lot of people are going to overlook him in that game. And then Saquon Barkley, guy that I think is really solid. He's very chalky. A lot of people love him. And then Joshua Palmer is my bring back for the Raiders. I think has a lot of upside. Christian Kirk, I like him a lot. Then I got Adams and Waller as my connection with Travis Kelce in my flex, who I know a tight end in the flex is a little weird, but I think he's doable to put in the flex as a tight end. Really, maybe the only one. And then Lions defense is my defense.
Yeah, I got Matt Ryan at QB. I got Aaron Jones and Elijah Mitchell as my running backs. I got Marquise Hollywood Brown, Michael Pittman, and Adam Thielen as my wideouts. Tight end Kyle Pitts. And my flex is Alvin Kamara. And then I had the Lions defense at cheap 2K.
There you go. I went a bit different than everyone. So I went Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Eckler, Kamara, Hollywood Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Romeo Dubes as my deep sleeper at $3,000, Darren Waller, Michael Pittman as my flex, and I went the Dolphins defense. I still have a lot more money to spend. I might touch that up. I bet you guys might touch that up later in the week. It's only Tuesday. We're prepping for Sunday, so there's a long way to go. But that is going to conclude episode 1 of the DFS Dudes. We will be back next week recapping the money we made, recapping the total money for the recapping all the money we made for our own lineups and the consensus lineup, and prepping you guys again for week 2. You guys have any final words you want to say?
I think my lineup's going to destroy you guys. So we'll see on Sunday.
All right, yeah, we'll see. Guys, we can't wait for Sunday. All right.
Yeah, Sunday can't come any closer. Thank you guys all so much for watching. And Jake, what's the saying from the league? Say it. We'll close that off with that. Being back from the fall monitor, we are back talking about fantasy football.
Of course, there are many things a man can do with his time, and this is better than those things.
We'll see you guys.
Sure.